everyone? It's Tuesday the 7th of January and it's just been confirmed by the UFC that we have an absolutely stacked card for a fight night card next February the 22nd. So let's not fuck about and get straight into it. Now for the main event, Henry Cejudo is back. He's been on a 2-fight losing skid, losing against Aljamain Sterling and losing against Merab Dvalishvili, who's now a champion. So a former champion and a champion. So it doesn't really hurt your stock that much. But he is on a 2-fight losing skid at the end of the day. And he's fighting Song Yadong. Now, is Song Yadong in the good books for the UFC? Like, he had a big matchup against Petr Yan, lost that matchup, so you would think he would fight down the rankings, but they were close to making him versus Umar Nurmagomedov. In fact, they did make that fight, and then something happened where it just didn't happen, and then they gave Umar the title shot. But he must be in the UFC's good books, because why are they giving him these big matchups when he just lost his last fight against Petr Yan? It makes no real sense to me. But now he's fighting Henry Cejudo, which again is kind of a big matchup, but I'll let it slide, because it low-key makes sense that Cejudo's again on a 2-fight losing skid, so it makes sense that they made this fight. I think that Henry Cejudo wins this one. I'm a bit surprised that Cejudo didn't try and hold out for an O'Malley fight. I feel like they could have made that one, but maybe UFC are like, yeah, Cejudo isn't the needle mover that he thinks he is, the pay-per-view seller that he thinks that he is. You know, Cejudo thinks he's some big pay-per-view seller when he's just not. That is not the case. So maybe they thought, you know what, we'll give him Song Yadong. I thought maybe they'll give him Mario Batista, but Song Yadong, whatever. I think this will be a competitive fight. Song Yadong makes it competitive for pretty much everyone. I do think Cejudo wins this one, especially being 5 rounds, but I am interested in this fight. I think it's still a fun one as well. Just low-key a bit baffled at the matchmaking, but it's not awful matchmaking, just a bit baffling. And then for the co-main event, we have Rob Font taking on the legend Dominick Cruz. And I'm going to be honest, this is kind of a nothing fight. A fun fight, but a nothing fight. Now, Dominick Cruz, the last time we saw him, he lost to Chito Vera, like 2 years ago now, maybe even 3 years ago. He got knocked out by Chito Vera in a brutal fashion with a head kick, and now he's coming back against Rob Font. Me personally, I would have rather have seen Dominick Cruz versus Jose Aldo. That's what the fans have been asking for a long time. Mainly because it's a nostalgia trip to the WEC days. You know, they were both the champions back in WEC, in the UFC. Both arguably the GOATs of their weight division. So it would have made a lot of sense. It just would have been cool to see. You know, would have been a nothing fight, but at the same time would have just been really fun to see 2 legends go at it. But no, we're getting Rob Font versus Dominick Cruz. Again, kind of just a nothing fight. And I think the odds are against Cruz in this one. I think Rob Font's going to win this. Now, we don't know if this is 5 rounds. I doubt it will be. I think it will be 3 rounds. I still think it will be a fun fight though, so I'm not gonna moan too much, because these are fun fights. Doesn't really make sense too much. Rob Font obviously just lost to Davison Figueiredo and then got that win against Kyler Phillips, which is a decent win to be fair. So yeah, we've got this one now. Should it be co-main? I'm not entirely sure. Maybe you could have saved this for a pay-per-view, but hey, I won't complain at a stacked fight night card. Then have a banger of a fight between Edson Barboza and Steve Garcia in the featherweight division. And this is a big opportunity for Steve Garcia. The only real big name he's got on his resume is Chase Hooper, where he did absolutely decimate Chase Hooper, but Chase Hooper since then has gone on to the 155 division, has done a lot better. And to be fair to Steve Garcia, he's been on a nice winning streak as well, and he's looking to make that continue against Edson Barboza, which would be the biggest name on his resume. This would be a big opportunity for Steve Garcia. Do I think he gets it done? I'm not entirely sure. I feel like he's going to mix in his grappling. I know he's got crazy knockout power, but you're kind of a fool not to mix in the grappling against Edson Barboza. Edson's always struggled against people who mix in takedowns, and if you're just going to try to keep it on the feet, I feel like that'll heavily favour Edson Barboza. I know he's a lot older now, but he's still very much dangerous on the feet. I think I might favour Edson Barboza. I think it's a very fun fight. I just don't want to see Edson Barboza get chinned. We have another featherweight fight, which is Gene Silva taking on Malsik Bagdasarian. I don't know if I'm saying his name properly. He's Armenian. I don't know much about Malsik, I'll be honest with you. I know that he's a kickboxer / boxer. He's 8-2 in the UFC, in MMA. Sorry, he's had 3 fights in the UFC. We haven't seen him since 2023. But I feel like Gene Silva, I really thought after the year he had in 2024, and not only that, being a part of the Fighting Nerds fight like team, you know what I mean? I thought he would have had a bigger name I'll be completely honest with you. I thought he would have had someone in the rankings. There was lots of, he put in his hat to fight Movsar when Aljo pulled out later last year. And not only that, there was talks of him maybe against Josh Emmett. But obviously we haven't gotten that. And it just kind of has surprised me considering he had 3 fights in 2024. He won all by finish. He took a few short notice fights as well. So I thought the UFC were going to award him with a big name. But that isn't the case. But I feel like this is a decent fight. Could be a fun one. Gene Silver's always in fun ones. And it's kind of... It seems like we don't want to rush Gene Silver then if we're going to go down this route and not give him a big name after the year he had in 2024. But I'm very much looking forward to seeing Gene Silver back in the octagon. Right, now we get to the biggest fight on the card, in my opinion. Anthony Hernandez versus Brendan Allen, the middleweight fight. I think this should be the main event, me personally. If not the main, certainly the co-main. And my whole reasoning for this, it means so much to the middleweight division, whereas I feel like Cejudo and Song Yadong, it does mean a fair bit to the bantamweight division. Don't know if it means as much as this middleweight fight between Brendan Allen and Anthony Hernandez. And then obviously, if it was the co-main, it definitely means a lot more than Cruz versus Rob fucking Font, for sure. But yeah, I feel like this should be the main or co-main, because I feel like we need to see 5 rounds of this fight. I don't think 3 rounds does this fight justice. The same way 3 rounds didn't do Brendan Allen versus Imavov justice, in my opinion, and that was a co-main as well, which I also think should have been a main event. But regardless, this should be 5 rounds. I need to see 5 rounds of this one. I mean, Brendan Allen has been in a co-main in Paris. He was in a main event against Chris Curtis, and then you had Anthony Hernandez, who was in a main event against Michel Pereira. So I feel like, why wouldn't you? And I also think this fight's just going to be very good. Anthony Hernandez is in some great fights. I think it's a 50-50 matchup. I've seen a lot of people say, oh, Anthony Hernandez is going to run through and it's going to be an easy one for Anthony Hernandez. I don't think it will. I'm not going to sleep on Brendan Allen just because he lost a close fight against Imavov, where he became very gun-shy at the end of the fight after winning the first round. I'm not going to do that against Brendan Allen. I don't really like Brendan Allen, but I'm not going to sleep on his abilities. And I think that Anthony Hernandez is the dark horse of that middleweight division. But regardless, I still think this is a tough fight for him stylistically. So I'm very much looking forward to this fight. I feel like it should be the co-main. It does say on the images that it's not the official bout order, but I do think it's official that Cruz and Font is the co-main, but it shouldn't be, in my opinion. But regardless, a fantastic fight. It means a lot for that middleweight division. Yeah, I want to see 5 rounds of this fight, I'll be honest. We also see that Michael Chiesa has a fight and the opponent hasn't been announced. Does anyone really care? We now move on to the big boys, which is Curtis Blades taking on Rizan Kuniev. Now, this is a weird one because Rizan Kuniev, he comes straight from the Dana White Contender Series. So he's getting, I think he's still in the top 5, and Curtis Blades, who just fought in his last fight, fought for a championship, the heavyweight championship. Well, yeah, he's fighting a Dana White Contender Series fighter who just got through. I also know he lost to the guy, Renan Ferreira, who Ngannou just knocked out in the PFL. I think he had a no contest, actually, my bad. But regardless, this is a big opportunity for Rizan, and I feel like this is a super risky fight for Curtis Blades because he's got everything to lose. Yes, I would predict that Blades wins. I haven't seen the other guy fight, I'll be honest with you. I'll predict that Curtis Blades wins this one. It's just a very weird one in my opinion. Like, it's just very risky for Curtis Blades. He's got everything to lose, and Rizan doesn't. This is a massive opportunity for him. So I'd imagine the UFC are high on this guy because why else would you give him this massive opportunity? It doesn't really make sense to me. I know the heavyweight division is kind of lacking in terms of, opponents and whatnot, but why wouldn't you give this opportunity to someone like Mick Parkin or something? Someone who's coming through the heavyweight scenes. I don't really get this, but whatever, I suppose. And those are the fights that we have announced for this Fight Night card, February 22nd. And again, I just think this is a very stacked Fight Night card. All these names on a Fight Night card. Usually you'd see these as like fights to build up a pay-per-view card, but no, just a bog standard Seattle UFC card, and we've been blessed with a nice Fight Night card. Maybe there's been some pressure for the UFC to stack a load of cards, given that boxing recently have been stacking pretty much every single card they've got, so maybe the UFC are like, okay, we need to do the same, even though the UFC, to be fair to them, have been doing that for many moons now. But I just feel like maybe it's added a bit more pressure for the UFC to be like, okay, we need to keep on stacking these cards and stack them real good, whether they're pay-per-view cards or whether they're even fight night cards. But let me know in the comments, what do you guys think about this card? Are you excited for some of the fights? What changes would you make to this card? Like, what is your excitement levels out of 10? I'm interested to see how people perceive this card, because I've seen some people say, oh, it's an okay card, and others say it's a great card. I understand. I think it's a great card for a fight night card, but it's also nothing out of this world, I feel like. But let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching the video, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.